friends, and welcome back to Rugged Mountain Homestead. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and if you recall last week I did post a video about how to make a meal plan, and I realized that before I make my meal plan for this upcoming week that I had a lot of odds and ends in the refrigerator. If you're finding yourself with a lot of odds and ends in the refrigerator after taking care of your weekly meal plan or doing your week of meals, the best thing to do and the very first thing to do is to take care of those odds and ends. And that's what I'm doing here today. So I thought I'd bring you along with me, let you see the odds and ends and what I'm going to do with them. The first being that I have some leftover asparagus from the chicken and asparagus bake, which was absolutely fantastic. I have some pineapple juice leftover from a can of pineapple chunks that I ate as a snack for a couple nights. Half a head of cabbage that I really need to go ahead and use for making more coleslaw from the barbecue brisket. I had to think for a second. The barbecue brisket from last week. Half an onion, a good bit of bacon, and my last bit of chicken pulled from the bone, from those chicken legs and thighs that I boiled and pulled. So, you might be saying, what in the world are you going to make with all that? Well, a lot of times when I get a mishmash of meat and veggies, a little bit of juice, fruit juice, first thing that comes to my mind is a good stir fry. I just do this off the top of my head with the odds and ends. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to heat up my skillet so that it gets really hot, and I'm going to chop up some bacon because instead of putting any oil in the pan, I'm going to use the fat from the bacon. This is going to be totally off the top of my head. Like I said, no recipe, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to use a different cutting board for my bacon than I use for my veggies. Use my slicing knife. Say 3 slices. And I'm even going to take these really thin slices, these really small slices, and I'm going to cut them in half again because I just want them to be little flavorful bits. I'm also experiencing an abundance of eggs right now. It seems with the days getting a little longer, the chickens are starting to up their production. So this also gives me a good reason to throw in and scramble an egg or two. When I start getting an abundance of eggs like this, the only way to deal with it, if I'm not wanting to sell them at the moment, is to get in the kitchen, get cooking, and get baking. So I'm going to set this aside for a little bit while my cast iron pan heats up and I wash my hands before we move on. Now in my weekly meal plan, I always leave a space for leftovers because invariably you're going to have some, and I would rather do it this way than to make 7 meals and just have it all kind of add up on me and then have a big bunch of stuff in the refrigerator and then having to worry about any food waste. Food waste is a big no-no. All right, so I'm just going to dice up this half of a large onion. You can use however much you like. And, you know, I'm probably only going to use half of this. So a quarter of a very large onion. Now, since this is a stir fry, I was just thinking that I'm not going to worry about dicing this up because cutting it at the angle that I did, I got some really long, thin strips. And since this is a stir fry, that's perfectly fine. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Now, I tested my skillet by throwing in a little strip of onion, and it has sizzled. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bacon in. Okay, so while that bacon is frying up, I'm going to go ahead and finish chopping the rest of my vegetables. I just took out a bowl, and as I go along, I'm just going to stick the chopped veggies into that bowl. That way I can add them to the skillet once the bacon has produced some fat. Now my cabbage, I only use like probably 1 or 2 slices, depends on how much you like cabbage. So I'm just probably going to take 2 slices of this. And I'm going to go ahead and cut them rather thinly. Maybe I'll use 3. Yeah. If you get that core piece in there like I just did, and it'll be very noticeable right there. I'm just going to cut off the cabbage around it. I don't like that core piece in my stir fry. And then I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to put it in a bag over here for the chickens. And then I'm just going to cut this once across because it's in strips from the way that I cut it as a slice off the cabbage, and I'm just going to cut it across. Sometimes it's easier if I just show you instead of me trying to explain it. Okay, I'm just going to cut it across like that. And since I cut it as a slice off the cabbage head, it's going to give me these little thin strips. And on that previous slice, it kind of fell apart already into long strips. So I'm just going to cut the pile of those in half. And then I will put this in our bowl. Now for the asparagus, I'm just going to use the tips. I can use the spears, roast them later, but I'm just going to use these tips. These spears are very thin, as you can see. So they're not, that lets me know that they're not going to be woody. When you get asparagus spears that are thick, and this is a little thicker, this one, they tend to get woody and they're not able to be eaten. They're not any good. So asparagus, roasted asparagus spears will be on my menu plan for this upcoming week. But for now, I'm just going to chop these up. Now the last bit of chopping we have to do is the chicken. Since I'm not going to be chopping any more veggies, I'm going to go ahead and use this chopping block for the chicken. It being the last thing I use it for. And again, this chicken has also been pre-cooked. So I don't mind using a wooden chopping block when the chicken has been pre-cooked. It's only when it's raw, I will not use it. Now let's go ahead and check on that bacon, see how much fat is coming along, and then I will take 2 eggs and scramble them up and put them in first because I want these eggs to get scrambled hard. Now that our fat is nice and melted, I'm just going to go ahead and add this bowl full of veggies. Now just because it's a little bit of onion, asparagus, and cabbage, I would like a little bit more. So I think I'm going to open up a bag of mixed vegetables and just put a handful in there. So I'm just going to take my fingers on the bag and just squeeze some out. And that should be enough. I didn't have any fresh carrot, so I like to have some carrot in there. Now at this point, if I need any more fat, I will not be using fat. I will be pouring in some of the pineapple juice. I'm also not throwing away the band that was around some of the asparagus. I'm going to fold down this bag of mixed vegetables and use it on there. Simple as that. Let's go ahead and add this pineapple juice. There's just a tiny bit left in here, so why not? And at this point, I'm just going to add the chicken as well. Okay, so you don't want to forget your spices with stir fry. So forgive me for reaching. I'm going to add a good pinch of salt. Never forget your garlic. I don't ever measure out with measuring spoons when I'm doing something like this off the top of my head. So just until it's aromatic or you feel like that's enough for you, that's fine. I'm going to use a pinch of ginger. Not a lot, just a pinch, because this goes a long way. That's a very strong spice. Let me see. Oh, how about some red peppers? A dash of red pepper. A dash of black pepper. I'm going to add just a pinch of my homegrown celery leaf. I'll stir this up. Just combine it all. It's smelling really good already. And you have to have your liquid aminos. This takes the place of soy sauce. Has a lot less sodium than soy sauce. And since we use a good bit of it, that's always a plus. And I'm just going to pour that on until my sauce is looking like the right color. It's a very light brown, so perfect. I don't need to add any more in here because it does have some sodium in it. It's not sodium free. It has 310 milligrams, which is still 13%, which is still a good bit. And I did add a pinch of salt, and we have bacon in here. I probably shouldn't have added that pinch of salt, but We'll not be using any more of this. I don't want to make it too salty. So I'm just going to cover this and let it do its thing for a while. And now I'm just going to prep my rice. I know everybody knows how to do that. Now, since it's just Dean and myself, I'm just cooking half a cup of rice. So instead of using water, I'm going to use 1 cup of my homemade home canned chicken stock. Ooh, nice tight seal. So I'm going to measure out 1 cup of my chicken stock. Put this on the stove and let it come to a boil. Also, if you're short on time or you're doing some extra meal prepping, you could go ahead and pre-chop all of that I did here earlier, and then that way, you know, cut your time in half. This is the most simple thing to do when you have an excess of leftovers. Now that our rice is finished cooking, I'm just going to do this because this is how we like to do it. I'm going to put the rice into my stir-fry mixture. I just like it being really well combined. I'm not a keep the food separate type of girl. That just looks so yummy. Turn it on low. And that is going to be our meal. So it's a complete win. It is a really good, healthy meal. You have your carb, you have your protein, you have your fresh veggies. Nice and well seasoned. And you're using up the leftovers. Nothing is going to waste. So I'm going to fix a plate, call Dean down, and we're going to have some stir fry together. So thank you for joining me in the kitchen up in Rugged Mountain Homestead. We're always so glad when you do. I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, take care.